Thank you, Pascale. Do you want to wait a couple more minutes in case anyone else joins us from your network?
Are you online?
I scheduled us for about 10 minutes, not to start for a couple more minutes. So
yeah, sure.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, I don't understand why they're not online. I hope they didn't go on the old link. Maybe I could send them a last message. You got the message, right? Vous avez eu le message avec le bon... Yeah. Monday. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but I sent a correction. Oh, well, I'll send a message once more. Just to make sure.
And Dan is recording anyway, so we have it on the archive. Perhaps seeing that there are relatively few of us, we could just quickly go around the screen and introduce ourselves. Greg, do you want to just say a word about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, David. So I'm Craig Lomas. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Education at Bolton. I'm also working alongside David as part of the Lab Schools network. And it's been very, very inspiring working with David, looking at the work that the schools involved are doing. So I'm looking forward to these presentations also.
Dan, do you just want a sentence?
Yeah, good morning. My name's Dan. There's a sentence for you.
He works with me in the International Centre for Educational Leadership at the university. Simon.
Hi, I'm Simon Oldfield. I'm a head of department over here in Norfolk, in Dereham, at Northgate High School. Part of my role is the head of RE and citizenship, but another part of my role is that I'm the lab school coordinator. So myself and my colleague, the assistant head Dave, we coordinate the lab school operations around the school, trying to link it in. I'll talk more about later what that has looked like, but we've been very excited to be part of the lab school network and feel it's given us huge benefits as a school.
Pauline.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Pauline Walters. I'm one of the lecturers at the University of Bolton within the School of Education. I teach on mainly inclusion pathways. Happy to be here to learn more about ISEL and the work that you do with schools.
Thanks, Pauline. Dina?
Hi, everyone. Oh,
Go ahead.
Hello, I am a student here at EHESS and taking this course. My background is in public health. I work in public health research, and I'm a master's student in like a health-related master's here. But I've been interested in education for a long time. I have a lot of friends who are educators in the U.S. where I'm from. So yeah, this is a relatively new topic for me, but one I'm really excited to learn more about.
Okay. Mark? Thank you, Dina.
Hello, Mark Price. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Bolton on a kind of permanent safari to discover new ideas.
Lucy.
You can close the door.
Morning all, thank you for the invite as well. I'm Dr. Lucy Caton and I am the Centre Lead for AI in Education and a Senior Lecturer in the School of Education in the University of Bolton, and I predominantly work on postgraduate courses and doctoral supervisor.
Emma? Thank you, Lucy.
Hi, I'm one of the lecturers in the School of Education, so I teach on a range of programmes from early years to teacher for education. So happy to be here and learn a bit more about what you do with schools. Thank you.
And Marlene. Thank you, Emma.
Okay, so I said me.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Marlène Martin. I'm the teaching director here at the Lab School Paris, and I'm working alongside Pascale, well, for some years already, and I'm really happy to discover all about you, well, at least some elements about your schools and so on. Thanks.
Thank you, Marlene. And I'm David Hopkins, and I want to thank you, Pascale, for the invitation to present to the European network about the work we're doing in Bolton. And it's a real pleasure to be sort of part of this sort of group of colleagues who are sort of trying to make a real difference for the quality of learning and outcomes for the students that they're privileged to serve. I've got a PowerPoint presentation, so let me put this up. Is that all okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
All good.
So this is, there's just, you can see a slight image there at the bottom of the screen of the University of Bolton. And as I say, we're just delighted to sort of to participate, and thank you for the invitation. What we want to do in the time that we have available is that we've already had the introduction from Pascale. I would like then to take a little bit of time to describe the work that we're doing in Bolton, and then I'm going to introduce 4 of the schools that are part of our network. You've already met Simon from Northgate High School, Stacey Posselt from Beaumont Primary, which is very close to the university, are both going to make presentations. And then Helen Phillips, who is Director of Education in a multi-academy trust close by to us here in Bolton. The YES Trust is designed for students who present with challenges for their education. And I think that they do just exciting and innovative work serving those young people. And Helen Bradford-Keegan from the Bolton School. Bolton School is an independent, a very well-known independent school in England, located in Bolton and linked with us. And Helen will talk about her work in action research. So I hope that gives you a flavour of what we do here at the International Centre for Educational Leadership at the University of Bolton. And then we'll take some time at the end where my colleague Craig Lomas, who has just introduced himself to you, will make some comments on the presentation, and we'll try and respond to any questions that you may have. So if we go back to the beginnings of the laboratory school, it's fascinating to sort of to realize that this idea has been around for quite some time. It was just over 100 years ago that the American philosopher John Dewey established the first laboratory school at the University of Chicago. For me personally, Dewey has been highly influential. His book Education and Experience, which laid the foundation for experiential learning, has been profoundly important. And those of you who know me will also know that I'm a mountaineer and have been a very strong participant in and advocate for adventure learning and the Outward Bound movement. But we take very seriously the work that Dewey has done, and I think this phrase is so powerful. We do not learn from experience; we learn from reflecting on experience. And this notion of reflection, I think, is really, really crucial. There's too much synthetic fun, in my view, going on where people have an experience, but as our great poet T.S. Eliot once says, they may have had the experience, but they missed the meaning. And what we try to do is to get the educational meaning out of the work that we do. Dewey, if we go back to Dewey, when he set up his first laboratory school, he had 2 functions: one, to test and evaluate his theories about schooling and teaching, and second, to appraise the findings of these studies and work out subject matters for teaching methods that focuses on developing the individual student rather than didactic presentation. And those principles, I think, reflect the work that we're trying to do in our network. When we established this network about, 5-6 years ago, we tried to do this in a way that linked with local schools, linked with a new form of educational delivery in England through multi-academy trusts. We used as a basis of establishing our international centre, but very, very keen to follow the traditions of Dewey and other mentors of ours. For example, Bruce Joyce, whose face you will see in in a few minutes. Given the particular circumstances here at the university, we're not currently involved in initial teacher education programs. We now have a new head of School of Education, and we're hoping to integrate the work of our lab school with teacher education more consistently in the years that come. But we certainly see it, see our work as trying to exemplify research-based classroom practice, create settings for professional learning for teachers, really to develop the construct of the instructional leadership, and to continue to do our research into education. And I won't bore you too much with this, but we have a sort of an induction program in our lab school. And we also have a series sort of activities that are really sort of crucial to us that I've sort of mentioned there on the screen, but I'll go into a little bit more detail in a few moments. But what we try to do, being a university, we're also trying to provide accreditation for the work of teachers involved. And a number of colleagues in the who are leading schools in our network are also involved in our master's and doctoral programs as well. But we want to try to be more democratic also in terms of accrediting the work of individual teachers. In terms of what we do, we are very much committed to an approach to research, which is called action research, and you're all very familiar with that. We really buy into the original formulation by Kurt Lewin, who Kurt Lewin once memorably said, "There's nothing as theoretical as good practice, and nothing as practical as good theory." And that is very much an ethic that we buy into. And in the various editions of my book on classroom research, I've tried to lay out a practical as well as a philosophic basis for doing that. And we've also been, I've been heavily influenced by my mentors, one of whom I've already mentioned, Bruce Joyce. This is a man called Lawrence Stenhouse, who sadly died far prematurely. But Lawrence was the leader of action research in classrooms. And I really like this definition that he has of professional development. And that's a sort of, again, an ethic that we try to follow in our work. Now, let me just come on and just tell you a couple of the activities that we sort of take very seriously in our network. The first is, sorry, this is a rather busy slide, but one of the things that we do, and in fact we conducted one of these last Monday, are instructional rounds. We borrow the notion of instructional rounds from medicine, the notion of the grand round in medicine, as the professor of medicine tours round the hospital, engaging in the two things that professionals do, diagnosis and treatment. The professor takes a group around. He doesn't diagnose himself. He gets a group to diagnose the patient and then to suggest remedies for that patient. We've tried to adapt that, influenced by the work of Richard Elmore. We've tried to adapt that to education, and our notion of an instructional round is crucial to our work, where we try to use that as a way of developing a consistent pedagogy for the school and also for the network. Typically, what we do in an instructional round is that the school will open half a dozen classrooms for observation. Up to about a couple of dozen of the network will come around the classrooms. We spend about 20 minutes inside each classroom. And the only instruction that I give to colleagues is that there is no evaluation, no judgment. It is about description, description, description. And typically, if we have, say, 24 folk observing in 6 classrooms, by lunchtime, you will have generated about 144 pieces of data on the practice of the school. We're not so interested in individual teachers. We're interested in the practice that they carry out in their classrooms. And then we spend the afternoon trying to analyze that data and generate a series of hypotheses, or we call them theories of action, that actually characterize the practice inside the school. I'll say a word or two more about those later, but this is a really important aspect of our work, where we actually sort of try to learn from the practice of teachers in the network in a non-judgmental but professionally dynamic way. And we find that when we do that, that people are very, very enthusiastic. The non-judgmental aspect of our work is highly prized. There's a strong degree of collaboration, and the inductive generation of these theories of action is a powerful provides a powerful focus for ongoing professional development. And in that way, we learn in a structured way from the professionalism of our colleagues. The other activity that we engage in across the network are peer reviews, where schools will visit each other and conduct a sort of a reasonably structured set of observation in which they try to generate some insights to the school, and then capture them in protocols. If you look at the last bullet point there, that's really important to us. It's all very well having the observation, but we need then to actually put that into a framework that we can actually learn from. And so we try to put our observations into a format, and I'll give you an example of that in a little moment, of how we actually capture knowledge in a way that is sort of practical and learnable from, so that the protocols are a way of sharing good practice across the whole network. And just on this next slide, these are the types of things that the peer reviews actually focus on, which are pretty much, there's nothing sort of revolutionary there, but it gives you a sense of the types of educational knowledge that we sort of focus on in the network. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a background to the work that the network does. Obviously, I'll make some time for some questions when I conclude the presentation. But there's another aspect to our work which is really important, and I guess reflects my own sort of intellectual and professional biography. I've been involved since the mid-1980s, in fact, the early 1980s, in developing an approach to educational improvement or innovation called school improvement. And I founded the OECD's International School Improvement Program in the early 1980s, which tried to develop an international methodology for improving schools. You must probably know the sort of the contingencies here, but in 1979, Michael Rutter and his colleagues published a book called 15,000 Hours, which demonstrated for the first time, surprisingly, that schools actually make a difference to the learning and performance of their students. And they came up with a set of characteristics of the effective school, and we began to realize that the school accounted for at least about 30% of the achievement of young people. Prior to that, it was gender, it was socioeconomic background, it was ethnicity, it was IQ that was seen to be the key determinants of student outcomes. But the school effect has actually interestingly, quite a sort of a recent history. But that was just a description of the characteristics of an effective school. What we did in the International School Improvement Program from OECD and in other work, other international collaborative work, was to develop a strategy for improving schools, and that goes under the phrase of school improvement. And it's that's where I've done my professional work over the last sort of 40, close to 50 years. And and that also then inevitably comes part of what we do in our lab school. The 3 books there reflect the 3 sort of programs that I've developed over the time. When I was at Cambridge, we developed the Improving the Quality for Education for All School Improvement Program. That evolved into the Curiosity and Powerful Learning Program when I was based at the University of Melbourne. And more recently, I've just published my most recent book, Unleashing Greatness, which is the strategy that we employ inside our lab school network. And in a recent review by Phil Hallinger on the sort of research on educational change and management, our work has been sort of identified as being a sort of the leading center of work in terms of school improvement. And I say that with all due modesty, but just to demonstrate that there's good science behind what we do. I should just say a word about the sort of the phrase "unleashing greatness," and that is borrowed by from a colleague of mine, Michael Barber. So Michael Barber was my predecessor in government. I left the university for 5 years to work in government to lead educational reform nationally. Michael was my predecessor there, and he once pointed out that one can mandate the move from awful to adequate and fair to good, but as one progresses, one needs to unleash greatness. And I think one of the things that we found from our research nationally and internationally is that all educational organizations are on some form of developmental continuum. And we have to devise our intervention strategies according to the growth state that the school or the system is in. And what Michael is picking out there is you can be very top down when schools are struggling. But as they improve, you have to reduce the top down and give schools more freedom to innovate themselves. You need to help them to unleash greatness. And that understanding, I think, is sadly missing from a lot of policy formulations that I see going on around the world currently. So with that in mind, we have in the Unleashing Greatness strategy, see sort of a series of, these are not steps so much as these are sort of ingredients that need to be mixed according to the context of the school. There is a sort of an inevitable flow of action there between those steps, but essentially those are the key ingredients for an effective improvement program. And I'm going to say a word or two about each of those steps in a minute. I think I still have enough time to do that. I've listed them there. I haven't put a number by them, just a bullet point. But in one of the diagrams I use, I try to show the sort of the interaction between them. And what we've found from implementing this and testing this out in a number of different countries and jurisdictions is that you can start, wherever you actually need to start from, but you need also to sort of try to cover all of these elements in your own school improvement program. And if you find that some of these are missing, then the program is not going to be as successful as it could be. And I'm in a moment or two just going to go through briefly each of these steps to give you a sense of how we approach that in our work. But what we also try and do with our schools is to help them customize this into a sort of a narrative that is unique to themselves. We use the metaphor of the journey, and we talk about the journey of school improvement. When I first began developing the ideas, I say, when I was at Cambridge in the mid-80s, we had a very large Catholic school as part of our network. And the head of that said once, David, I really like the metaphor of the journey, but remember, we journey as pilgrims, not as nomads. And that, again, that thought has been really important to us. We journey having a set of values which drive us in a particular direction. We're not going around in circles. And the other little quote on that screen there, I don't think there's anyone old enough in the audience now to remember this, but the first sort of satirical program on English television back in the early 1960s was done by David Frost. You may remember David Frost as interviewing Nixon some years ago. Anyway, Frost's program was on 3 times a week, and it was called Not So Much a Program, More a Way of Life. And that's what school improvement is to us as well. It's not something you do in the 3rd week of July. It's not something you pick up and leave. It is an ongoing dynamic and process that ensures that you create the most powerful learning experiences for your students. And I'll give you a sense of that. Hopefully I'll give you a sense of that in a few minutes. And then we get our schools to sort of generate a sort of an action image, a poster of their journey. And this is one just taken from one of our Australian schools recently, just illustrating that it's not sort of a linear progression. It's not a sort of a bureaucratic tick list. It's a sort of an organic journey that we're on, driven by our moral purpose for our young people. And that and that is the sort of the first sort of point I wanted to elaborate on in terms of our framework for school improvement, is the importance of moral purpose and the importance to clarify moral purpose. But this is not some sort of soggy liberal aspiration. Moral purpose has to be linked to strategic action. And without that, it is insufficient. And so although we can articulate our values, we can articulate what we want for our young people, it has to be underpinned by a very clear set of processes and actions that are there to actually deliver on our moral purpose. And moral purpose is the phrase that we tend to use and bandy around without defining. I'm not going to define it now really, but I will share with you something that's really important to the values that our schools share. And that is an understanding that although we are all sort of competent and qualified people, not all of the youngsters who pitch up to our schools are so blessed. Early on, I began to realize, and I think this is now well held in psychological research, that we all have an internal narrative. We all have a life script that actually we talk when we talk to ourselves. You know, I was talking to myself, you know, making a cup of coffee half an hour ago, anticipating rehearsing this session. And I try to do that in a positive way, even though, you know, it can be a little bit sort of daunting to talk to an audience you don't really know. And we take the notion of life script seriously because we want to try and help our students develop a positive life script. They may rock up with all manner of disadvantage. Our task in our task in schools is to help generate a more positive life script. And we do that by what we teach, by how we teach, and by the kind of place our school is. And it's high expectations. It is the way in which we sort of personalize learning that actually can help adapt the life script for our students. And that underpins, I think, our moral purpose. Inevitably, we need to focus on classroom practice. This is the second point. And all of the worldwide evidence now is that it is only classroom practice that's going to impact positively on student learning. But how do we do that? I was aghast to hear from my friend and colleague Pasi Solberg, a professor at the University of Melbourne. Pasi was the guy who developed the Finnish school system, which, as you know, came up top in PISA for many years. But Pasi told me last week that a number of states in Australia have just created a law which says the only way you can teach in classrooms is through using direct instruction. And that really, really worries me, because unless we adopt a more adaptive approach, a more dynamic approach to classroom practice, I think we're not going to achieve our goals for our students. And this is a photograph of Bruce Joyce, and another of my mentors I mentioned earlier. Parsi and I have just written the introduction to the 10th edition of his book, Models of Teaching. And if you're unfamiliar with that, then please, please, please look at Models of Teaching. We wrote a book a few years ago, and we described our learning experiences in this way. We say they're composed of content, process, and social climate. We went on to say that as teachers, we create for and with our children opportunities to explore and build important areas of knowledge, develop powerful tools for learning, and to live in humanizing social conditions. I think that accords really strongly with what John Dewey was trying to do. We actually create for and with our children opportunities to build, explore and build important areas of knowledge. We develop their learning skills, and we try to help them learn in a community which is equitable and mutually supportive. And that, I think, is that provides the fertile soil for student development. And we do that as teachers by creating a pedagogy that takes seriously the interaction of teaching curriculum, assessment, and learning skills. We call that, again, borrowing from Richard Elmore, we call this the instructional core, and that becomes the focus of our work. But remembering that it is the task that students do that predicts their performance. And we've got to ensure that all of the teaching in classrooms focuses on the tasks and getting kids to do the appropriate task. And once again, we're informed by the work of Lev Vygotsky, who says that tasks have to be in the zone of proximal development of our students. So this is this is the framework. The schools adapt this to their own particular situation. But we feel without a clear focus on the instructional core, phrased in a way like this, we're not going to exploit the potential that pedagogy has for the improvement of learning. I can just now be a little bit more sort of organizational for a moment. The next step in the list of 8 is decide on the non-negotiables. And the issue here is that often schools which are well-intentioned do too much, and they do nothing well. Michael Fullan, the guru of educational change in the Western world, once said to me, look, David, we've got to get our schools to do one or two things really well, and everything else as well as they would have done anyway. And that, I think, is absolutely crucial. Schools that overload themselves, it's very, very problematic. But the key to this is that school leaders understand the difference between maintenance and development as the key functions for any organization. Yes, we have to have committees, roles, hierarchies, set curricula, etc., etc. Otherwise, the school will not function. And schools that are fail because their maintenance system is just not working. But if that's all we do, we will fall behind. The school has to have a development system as well. And that is the focus for these 1 or 2 priorities that we're going to add value to the school. And we sequence these priorities over time. And I've drawn that diagram deliberately because it's a development system that's under the maintenance system and percolates up and helps change and helps the school innovate and absorb new ideas into the rhythm of the school year. I'll try and go a little bit more quickly now. The 4th one is on narrative. And we have schools, we want our schools to tell strong stories about their work. We find that unless you can have a narrative, you don't actually communicate properly, because narrative schools are sort of stories are psychologically privileged. They provide a currency for our thinking, and they provide a vision of where we can go. So telling the story, creating the narrative is absolutely critical in terms of actually providing the dynamism to keep colleagues on the journey of school improvement. This is another slide to describe our instructional rounds. We will make these slides available to you, and I've already described the instructional round a moment or two ago. But what I said was that we also generate from these instructional rounds a set of theories of action that describe a classroom practice. And I've been doing this now for most probably a dozen years, perhaps more. And it's the interesting thing is that wherever I do these around the world, be it in Beijing or Melbourne or Santiago or in Bolton, as I did on Monday, the more I do, the less I learn, because it's the same types of things that emerge from these observations. Great teaching is globally relevant and looks pretty much the same around the world. It'll be adapted to different contexts, obviously, but it seems to be a pretty common language of high quality teaching wherever you go. And these are the 6 theories of action that I focused on in my sort of writing and exemplification. And as you can see there, that the theory of action tries to link teacher action with student behavior. And what I've also borrowed from a friend of mine, John Hattie, whose work you may be familiar with in terms of visible learning, the effect sizes of these. These are all have a pretty powerful effect on the learning of kids. And then what we try to do is, this is not enough just articulating a theory of action. It's not just enough to do John's research reviews. You then need to capture this in a rubric or a protocol that teachers can use to improve their own practice. And again, this is just an exemplification of one of the rubrics connected to tasks, I think, connected to task setting. So what we do is that we are very deliberate in trying to sort of give our teachers clear operational knowledge based upon the observations that we've done. But even that is not enough, because we then have to learn these strategies. We need to absorb them into our own repertoires of practice. And we have developed, again, the work of Bruce Joyce is important here, a coaching and peer coaching model, where we try to sort of understand the nature of questioning, the nature of sort of scaffolding. And we do that by theory, demonstration, practice, and feedback inside a workshop that we run inside the school. And then we put this into practice in the classroom through groups of teachers supporting each other in a sort of peer coaching, in a peer coaching way. So time is running out on me a little bit, but we establish in all of our schools triads where groups of teachers have a limited amount of time every week or fortnight to actually meet following workshops, to observe each other in pairs, using the protocols to inform their observations. And we build this in as a sort of a regular form of professional learning inside the school. Two more of these steps: the focus on instructional leadership. And 2 colleagues of mine, Ken Leithwood and Alma Harris, and I, a dozen years ago, wrote a paper called 7 Strong Leadership Claims, which became, we were pleased to find, the most read paper on leadership globally. We revisited these claims a few years ago, looked at the more recent research, and found that these claims still held true. And important thing is to underline here, don't have time to go through them all, but that school leadership is really important in terms of student achievement. And secondly, that all successful leaders draw on the same basic leadership practices, but these practices are implemented, enacted according to different contexts. And in the most recent version of the paper, we've sort of tried to elaborate what these practices are: setting direction, developing people, redesigning the organization, and keeping the focus on teaching and learning. The reference is there, and also on my website if you're interested in that. And then finally, we believe very strongly in networking, and we've tried to develop networks where schools can learn from each other. And a lot of the structural rounds, the peer reviews that I've been talking about, feed coherent strategic network action. So that is the sort of a brief run through to the school improvement framework that underpins our work as a laboratory school. And it certainly seems to us that this is the engine house. Once the school has actually established this infrastructure inside its way of working, then the school begins to actually take off. And I'm sure that the schools who are very soon going to talk to you will sort of exemplify that point. But at the heart of it is the sort of the quality of the colleagues inside the school, the leaders inside the school. Whatever we can say about sort of our research and what have you, it's they are the world expert inside their organization. I've gone on too long, as always. I apologize for that. I think what I'm going to do now is I won't, unless there are any really, really urgent questions that people may want to signal, what I want to do is to go into the presentations from colleagues. This is the repeat of the slide I showed you earlier. This is the sequence the colleagues are going to go through in terms of their presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Not at all, David. Thank you very much. It was all very interesting, and I felt it was very quick because your slides were extremely rich. There was a lot of interesting points to see, and I'm sure there will be a lot of questions. So we still have a lot of time. We still have 1 full hour. So thank you very much, and don't feel you've been too long. It seemed very short to me, at least.
Okay. Well, I will take a question if someone wants to mechanically raise their hand. If not, I'm going to pass the baton over to Simon from Northgate School. I'm really excited because I can see on the screen, I can see Simon, I can see Stacey from Beaumont School there. Wave says Stacey. Helen Phillips from the Yes Trust is there as well, as she was anyway. And then we've got the other Helen from Bolton School as well. So colleagues, you're in for a very rich hour learning from the exemplary practice of these colleagues. Simon, over to you.
Thank you, David. Now, as you saw on David's slide, it mentioned that it was Simon Oldfield and Zoe Galley. Zoe, who is the head teacher of Northgate High School, Dereham Sixth Form College and Dereham Education and Soccer Academy, does send her apologies. She's unable to be here, but she very much says hello and specifically to you, David. As a brief introduction and greetings from Norfolk, we are a school in the east of England, and it does look like quite a long name. We are Dereham High School, Dereham Sixth Form College, and Dereham Education and Soccer Academy. We are one institution across 3 separate sites. It's an 11 to 18 institution, whereby we have years 7 to 11, so up until GCSE at Northgate High School. Then Dereham Sixth Form College has years 12 and 13 where they take A-levels, and then Dereham Education and Soccer Academy looks at developing diplomas and A-levels for students who go on to formulate in football. All 3 are very successful. We have a number of students heading across to the United States to pick up football scholarships from the academy. Students from Dereham Sixth Form College go on to many universities, including Oxbridge and Northgate High School. Our year 11, 2 years ago, had 95 students in it that went through. Our current year 7 has got 202. So we are a growing school. We have over doubled in the 7 years between those two intakes. So we're very proud to be the institutions we are, and it's a joy to be able to share with you today the role that Lab School has played in that. John Hattie's research tells us that no one thing has a greater impact on student outcomes than collective teacher efficacy. David has alluded to John Hattie already. Teacher efficacy can be described as the conviction that an individual thinks, I cause learning. They have that conviction. And Hattie goes further and defines collective teacher efficacy as that collaborative conversation based on evidence. And that is a wonderful phrase that is at the heart of our educational establishment. And you can see links into so much David has talked about already. In 2021, when Northgate, Dereham Sixth Form and Dereham Soccer Academy were invited to become a lab school, it was clear that whilst this concept of collaborative conversation based on evidence was already happening across our school and colleges, it would be greatly enhanced by the freedom and the structure at the heart of the lab school network. We could see that it would build on the foundation of collaborative working, it would build on the moral purpose that was already firmly in place, and it would build on the strong research base that we were convinced of. I want to share this quote with you because this really resonated when we first engaged. Laboratory School is a vehicle for developing outstanding colleagues who've got a capacity for autonomous professional self-development through systematic self-study, through the study of the work of others in their field, and through testing the ideas through research procedures. It was that combination that got us on board, got us enthusiastic, and has really made a difference to us. At the heart of all the learning at our school is the learning cycle. This is a picture of the Northgate learning cycle. We established it in 2017, so it predated our involvement with Lab School. However, it is at the heart of what we do. And in a way, it led us to being part of the Lab School network. We follow Sweller's cognitive load theory, which is a research-based model which allows students to build up core knowledge and application of skills much sooner. This approach means that students don't become overloaded with extraneous knowledge. It builds up their confidence in their ability to succeed. And we have these structures: explain, model, scaffold, practice, and then feedback and assessment. Depending who you talk to, there are either 5 stages to the learning cycle or 6, because feedback and assessment can mix in together or be separate, but that's part of that ongoing learning conversation. All the schemes of work, all our homework, and crucially, all our classroom practice have been built around this cycle. It's a narrative journey that reflects the moral purpose of the school and the moral purpose of the college. It's not a rigid structure. If the previous step needs revising, we head back to it. And there's certainly not an expectation that all of this occurs in a single secondary school lesson, which at Northgate and Dereham Sixth Form is 1 hour long. It's a learning cycle, not a constraint to an hour. We believe that grounding in this has established a model of learning which is key to the success that our students have, and therefore is key to the success we're having as institutions, both in the destinations of our students and the growth in number of students that we're experiencing. With this regular method, careful monitoring of testing, we can begin to assure that any fear around assessment is minimized. It simply becomes part of the learning cycle. We're not heading towards an assessment. Assessment is part of it, and it flows on, and the why this, why now is a really clear explanation. We focus on how things can be done differently in the future to improve skills and learning. There's different metaphors to describe our learning cycle when it comes to laboratory school. In some ways, it's the star at the center of our school solar system, around which all other aspects of laboratory school orbit. Alternatively, it is the Trojan horse through which we've smuggled laboratory school into the day-to-day routines of our college. Pick whichever one is the most positive. The learning cycle has enabled those collaborative conversations to take place across the school, the college. It's allowed us to talk about colleagues non-hierarchically about the moral purpose. These conversations also happen about students. I've got a short video later on to show you about 6 students who will tell us about their experiences and the impact it's had on them. But most crucially, for teacher efficacy, the impact on colleagues, teaching colleagues in particular, who've been able to embed the moral purpose of the school and see it worked out through those 5 stages. So that's the learning cycle. Now, whilst the learning cycle predated our involvement with Lab School and led us to it and gave us that launch point, that center of the solar system, or that Trojan horse, as a result of Lab School in September 21, we introduced coaching groups. We asked all the staff to consider that moral conviction that brought them into education. All of our colleagues are there, but not because they needed a job, but because they had a passion for education. That difference to make, that opportunity to make the difference in the lives of young people and to work effectively with colleagues. And therefore, coaching gave us that opportunity to formalize the collaborative conversations about teacher efficacy. Collaborative conversations based on evidence. Those coaching groups, based on the principles that David spoke so eloquently about, have given us the opportunity to extend and experience those learning cycle elements. That idea of, oh, what things? And we literally stood in front of the staff and said, okay, when you wake up in the morning and you're going to head to work, what is that thing that you say, do you know, I wish I could do that better. Let's focus on that. That moral purpose that the individual has. And that gave us the opportunity to seek that outside the hierarchy of a management structure, outside the hierarchy of anything related to appraisal, performance-related pay, and just network with colleagues, with research, with those colleagues, especially giving us the ability to test ideas. And this crucial phrase we came across with coaching, colleagues that we know, like, and trust. John Dewey has taught us that we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. And what we found here at Northgate is the coaching cycle gave a beautiful, powerful context for that reflecting on experience. As a colleague said from our music department, one of our music department colleagues introduced me to the principle of practice doesn't make perfect. Instead, practice makes permanent. For him, that was particularly appropriate for musical instruments. How easy it is to pick up a bad habit in the way you finger a guitar or the way you approach a piano. Practice makes permanent. But if you work with colleagues, practice can make perfect as well, because it's that discussion that have it. Now, on my next slide, I've got a focus, a flavour of the coaching goals that cropped up. This is just a few of them. You can see I've highlighted it in black, in dark bold type, the way it links to the learning cycle. I'm not going to leave this slide up very long, but I will share it. But colleagues were embedded and investigating how they could, in a way, make themselves a little bit stronger, a little bit better at those aspects of the learning cycle. And then at the end of the coaching cycle, they're gathered like this. Again, this slide will be too small for you to see, but what we have here is the area of focus, then the goal that was done, and then the observed outcomes. We called them personal self-reflections. The word feedback we felt was a bit too loaded, but what it was essentially is, colleagues, what did you learn? And therefore, what can other people learn from you? Here is our model element, and also here is our scaffolding element. These were gathered, then we made them anonymous, and then we distributed them amongst the whole teaching staff. Therefore, it becomes self-generated research. I did say to colleagues, whilst I've anonymized this, I know who everyone is. So if you read an interesting comment, let me know. I'll link you together. A vast number of teachers did, and that became another element of that collaborative conversation, not just in the coaching pairs, but then beyond. Whilst the learning cycle predated becoming a lab school, and then coaching was a response to us becoming a lab school, what we've also benefited as an institution are those conversations with networking colleagues, with linking elsewhere. And we've been really fortunate that over here in the east of England, we've been able to link with institutions in the northwest of England who are further down the lab school process than us. We're very grateful to colleagues at Thornley High School in Bolton for inspiring us with their document, which was called Effective Teaching. They shared their reflections, and out of it, we introduced and shaped, and here's the front cover of our laboratory school handbook. In it, it's based on the non-negotiables that David talked about earlier. It's based upon our learning cycle. It came out of instructional rounds of appreciative inquiry and reflects the best practice of our school and college. We're a growing school, as I've already mentioned. 7, 8 years ago, we had 95 Year 7 students coming in. This September, we had 202. And with it, that brings new staffing. What we found with the handbook is new staff were integrated really quickly into the way of doing things. And also established staff were both challenged, equipped, and celebrated in the work that they were doing. So in our handbook, we talk very clearly about the learning cycle. Here are some examples of pages. We give examples of what good practice is. We look at procedures and protocols and equipping people to do it. Sitting behind this at the moment, admittedly printed booklet is also an area of our shared network where examples of good practice are built. So whilst there's an element of a fixed document, we've also established an area where colleagues can share good practice, not just in conversations, but virtually as well. David, shall I speed on?
Yeah, please. We're getting over. Yeah, I think just.
So what I am going to do then, I'm afraid, is, so that's the image. I'm going to skip over our students speaking, because that would be a 3-minute video, and just take it to the end. Is that okay, David, if I wrap up now? Yeah. So imagine then a video of 6 students talking about the learning cycle and the impact it's had on them. But that's where we're up to at the moment. We introduced the handbook in September, and we're in the process of evaluating the impact. We're doing learning walks, we're doing instructional rounds, we are surveying staff with questions about how they're using it and noting that, and also talking to the students about the impact that it's having with them. We're hoping that come next September, we'll be able to speak to you again about an updating of the laboratory handbook. It's a live document, it will be changed. We'll have staff who are engaged even more in the self-study and students who've thrived in this powerful learning environment. But overall, what we're looking for this year is even more conversations about that collaboration based on evidence. So that's Northgate High School, Dereham Sixth Form College and Dereham Education Soccer Academy. Thank you. I don't know if we've got time for any questions, but I'm going to stop sharing there. That's the overview. Thank you. Over to David.
Stop sharing there, Simon. Thank you so much. Most probably we were a bit ambitious trying to get everyone into the time, and I'm conscious that I went over time on myself as well. Are there any sort of, if anyone's got a sort of a really urgent question for Simon, just click the hand up. And yeah, Pascale, do you?
It's not a really urgent question, but it's a question that will be, I think, for everyone, and so I prefer to ask it now so that other participants maybe can also think about it. It's actually a double question. It's when we hear this, we have the feeling that everything is wonderful and it's just a question of having a good structure and then everything is smooth and easy. But I suppose, I mean, unless it's something that we only have in France, sometimes people get sick, people get, you may also meet with difficulties, people may want to participate or may not want to participate that much. So it would be interesting also to know some of the challenges that you have, if you do. And the second question is, how do you manage with time? Do you manage to get your teachers to come during the holidays, or do you have extra days days where the students are not coming to school, and you can, because time is, for us at least, it's not only for us in the school, but in France in general, it's a real challenge. When do the teachers meet and do all that? Sorry, so this double question, but I'll give you the floor back.
To answer that very briefly with those two questions, in terms of staff enthusiasm and take up, okay, David was really helpful in us launching this, and the vast majority of staff saw the importance and bought into it. We're a staff of about 90 teaching colleagues, and I think there were difficult conversations with 3 of them, and then just in the way that circumstances work, the one colleague we had a conversation with who maybe was the most problematic was reaching the end of their teaching career and is, in an educational sense, no longer with us. I don't mean in a more drastic sense. And I do wonder if that was part of the, I've got a few months to go before I retire, how do I take this on? I think if we did hit any deep issue, it was related to the second one of how do we find the time. We found the vast majority of colleagues, and even the 2 that we had the kind of more deep conversation with, their concern wasn't around the theory. It wasn't around the, this isn't a good idea. It was an, oh my word, how do we find time? And I think each institution needs to find their own answer to that. We have definitely compromised what we can do with what we would like to do and brought it into reality. We have made the use over here in the UK. We do have dedicated days and time in teacher contracts for training, and we've tried to use that wisely. We have made some elements compulsory and we've made some elements optional. So for instance, even though I mentioned the lab school and coaching is separate to our appraisal structure, we have made one appraisal target for the last couple of years for teaching staff.
So,
hey, focus on this. So we've tried to compromise that, but it is an issue. Sorry, David.
yeah, no, thank you, Simon. We've got a bit of time at the end for questions. So I'm really concerned now we actually give the other colleagues the opportunity to make their presentations. So Stacey Postle is the outstanding head teacher of Beaumont Primary School in Bolton, and she's been involved with us, well, almost since the beginning. Stacey, over to you.
Just to say, David, I'm in the Northwest at the minute speaking to Northwest heads, and the work that you're doing in Warrington was part of the discussion about what's happening in Warrington that's positive. So just wanted to pass that on, that word is spreading.
It's spreading, huh?
Yeah, and our Warrington heads are getting a lot from everything that I've got from you in the last couple of years. So hello, colleagues. It's really nice to see you all virtually. David said that I'm the head of Beaumont Primary School in Bolton, and we've got our strapline that children are the heart of everything we do. So if we go to the next slide, please, Dan. So all about us, we're a 1-form entry. We've got 222 children at the minute, and we've been with the Lab School Network since 2020. We've got meta learning, which is our metacognition strategy. We've got vocabulary and curiosity running through our curriculum, and that's on the back of the work that we've done with lab schools. So I'll go further into that. Thanks, Dan. So my philosophy as a leader is you've got to get your culture right, and the work that I've done with David over the last couple of years has helped me understand how important authentic relationships are to cultivate that robust culture. That the fact that we've got to be good listeners, we've got to be learning continuously, and co-constructing the action plan for each culture. So I've been talking about the fact that every school is its own microculture, and one size doesn't fit all. However, the Unleashing Greatness strategy helps you mould what that look should be like for each setting. But it has to be done with each other, and it can't be just from the top. The leader can't say, oh, this is what we're doing. And I believe it's a shared leadership process. School development always has to happen. I'm always thinking what's next, as long as it's not going too fast. I always say that it's as fast as possible, but as slow as necessary. School development is continuous, as you all know, that we wouldn't even be on this call today if we weren't had value in that. making sure that the development training and support's there with rigour and a focus, but the peer reviews that are part of the appreciative inquiry programme that I think David will have spoke about earlier is really crucial in making sure that that's developed forward and our journey is always moving in the right direction for the children that we serve. But building capacity in today's climate, I don't know what it's like in Europe, but at the minute in our country, we really do have a retention crisis, whether it's teachers or head teachers. And I do feel that this model helps to build that capacity. It doesn't only just promote practices and our innovative styles, but it also makes sure that we're providing the leaders of the future. So those are my 3 areas that I've developed as being really key for my leadership of my school. Thanks, Dan. So where it all started, I met David 4 years ago, and he gave this PDF document out at first, and like it says, I was sold. So if you haven't read this document, colleagues, I'd suggest it's one of the first things that you do. And it did take me a while to unpick it and understand it and how that was going to work for my school. But what it did do, it gave me that springboard to see what it could look like. But it also was shared with my staff and my team, and the language of unleashing greatness is now a common phrase, and we don't just use it with each other, we use it with the children as well. And what a positive way to start every meeting when you're saying that you're unleashing that greatness. So this is where it all started for me. So if you haven't got a copy of that, make sure you read it. Thanks, Dan. So the journey with Lab Schools, as like I said, has been over 4 years, colleagues. So please don't think that this is a instant fix. I'll make sure this happens this year. It really doesn't. And it will build up in your schools with the focuses that you want it to have. And you can pick out what suits you first. I think when I started on the journey, I thought that I had to do what was happening down the road at another school, but it really isn't like that. It's all about what you feel is key for your school. So the things that it's brought to me and my leadership in my school is the networking and the learning. I don't know what it's like in Europe, but when you go on a course, I feel that sometimes the course content by the person who's presenting sometimes isn't the most influential information you go home with. It's normally that nugget of information that you get from the colleagues around you. And we're in such a fast-paced lifestyle at the minute to slow down and to actually have those real quality conversations with like-minded professionals is brilliant. And the thing is about Lab School, guys, if you want to contact me and you want to contact Simon or Helen, everybody is open to talking about learning for children. So it really is a great group to be a part of. And David is always on the end of a phone. So network and learning for me is one of the highlights of Lab Schools. Instructional rounds is our appreciative inquiry actual activity that we do. I was fortunate to be a part of one on Monday, and I'm going to say, no word of a lie, I skipped out of that school with so many ideas, and I am so enthused with what I saw that I'm already thinking about next year's school development plan. But what that school will have got out of it, they will have got that positive feedback from all those professionals to say, this is what we're doing great. And if we can make sure this is a part of our full pedagogical approach, then every child will get whatever what they need and what we can provide. The theories of action are what we gain from the instructional rounds, and I have got an example of that on one of the slides. Peer reviews, we're looking at next steps for Lab Schools Bolton is to pinpoint an area that we want to look at and use the appreciative inquiry process on that. But You'll be listening to Helen Bradford Keegan in a minute, who's working at Bolton School, which is a private school here in Bolton. And I'm a primary school, and we worked with Thornley, a secondary school. And the thing, what it brought home to me is teaching is teaching. Children are children, and we can all learn together, no matter what field we're from, nurseries all the way to further education and universities. Master's degree, I just completed my Master's in Educational Leadership through Bolton University, and a big shout out to Lucy Caton, who's on the call. She was my tutor and helped me through my dissertation. So you've always got opportunities to work with Bolton University as well. And that was a 3-year Master's programme where it was exemplary for my understanding as leaders. And I actually focused on coaching, and that as a vehicle to move my school forward. So you can see at the right hand side of your screen, colleagues, you can see the word coaching and research. That's what's happening in my school. We are a coaching school and we are research informed. And that's been a byproduct of working with David and the laboratory schools. So lots going on, and I know it looks like a lot, but that's happened over 4 years. That wasn't an instant fix. I'm happy to talk to anybody in more detail if they want to ask any questions. Next slide, please, Dan. So I believe you've already seen this slide, and I've put some Beaumont green ticks on because this is what I've achieved working with David within my school, and it's part of practice. So it really does all fit together like a big jigsaw puzzle in the end. So make sure that if you're looking at one aspect of it, that you're always following it up with how you could make it better by incorporating this as a whole model in the future. Thanks, Dan. So we do have a culture now that has a cycle which is reflective, envisions the success and continually strives for the best of children in our care. I've just seen a typo, sorry about that. But I know David will have talked about this. It is a continuous cycle. We never stop learning, but that's what we teach the children, isn't it? That learning is a lifelong behaviour that we should instill in our little people. Thanks, Dan. So these are our theories of action that we've, I think it was June 6th, I think it was, where we came up with the theories of action for my school. So we've got 10 theories of action. I'll just let you scan your eyes over those. This is all the great work that's happening in my school. Now, we did this in 2020, and then we've done it in 2024. So I don't want you to think, colleagues, you have to have them every half term or every term. This is 4 years from the beginning to the last time. Thanks, Dan. Next slide. So we've got, I think, 9 theories of action this time. I'm sure these slides will be shared with you. And even that language, when the school and its adults consistently emphasise prior learning, then learners are able to take more control. So it's all about that positive behaviour that those teachers and those professionals are using. Next slide, please, Dan. And there you go. So that's what we're working with at Beaumont at the minute, and this underpins my whole school development plan for next steps as well. And the coaching is a vehicle to make sure that we are moving, we always continually come back to, well, let's look at metacognition in this coaching cycle, let's look at questioning in this coaching cycle, and so on. So it's almost natural now. You can't do this on your own as well, leaders. You do need to get your team involved. I've got a very competent coaching champion who would be very willing to speak to anybody you would like her to speak to about how she facilitates this logistically. One thing I might add, colleagues, is that if you are bringing coaching into your school, you have to give people time to do it. If you want it to be an add-on at the end of the day or before or in the dinner hour, it isn't going to work. So we actually put time within the school day to make sure that that happens. You've got to give it some hierarchy within your school improvement plan. Thanks, Dan. So my next steps are to make sure that we use our instructional round feedback and what's next, share our success and our journey with partners and form more networks, hence you guys being on the call and having that appreciative inquiry at its heart. Encourage our teachers to study at a master's level. I learned so much from it. I really do feel that our colleagues in Finland do have it right, that that respect is really there for them because they have to be at that master's level. And David may convince me one day to do the PhD. I don't know, he's trying. And then our pracademic approach, which is basically being research informed and making sure that we have the research behind our decisions for our context and our school. So that's Beaumont, and I'm happy to take any questions. And there's my email address if anybody wants to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacey. What I'm going to suggest is that I'm really keen that we give the two Helens the opportunity to give their presentations. So if you can just keep your questions, but we've got time at the end to do that. But I just want to make certain that the two Helens are able to present. Just to say, Stacey, I want to tell the others about that evening I had in your school where your colleagues were all presenting their own research on metacognition. And for me, that was a really sort of really exciting opportunity to see the really deep work that your colleagues were doing, but also how that was being reflected in enhanced practice. And if ever a laboratory school was doing something, that's what they should be doing. So thank you. I'm now going to ask Helen Phillips. Helen is the Director of Education for the Yes Trust based in Congleton. Helen, I think you need to say a little bit about who you all are and to share with us the exemplary practice you're doing for the benefit of the youngsters who are in particularly challenging circumstances.
Hi everyone. I presume everybody can hear me. Yes, I can see if there's people smiling. The Yes Trust is Yes is short for Youth Engagement Schools, but we've actually named it that because we say yes to all students. Sometimes yes, and then how are we going to do this? But that's that part of our moral purpose is that we look to, you can see there, transform the lives of the students in our schools. Can I just check that my PowerPoint is showing that it's come up? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So essentially, we're a specialist trust. So all of our children are either in SEMH schools, so that's social, emotional, and mental health challenges, or they're in alternative provisions, or they're in SEND schools. So we're currently, at the moment, actually, I'll add to this in a moment because we've just had some news through this morning, which means that another 4 schools have officially joined us this morning, another campus of schools. So we're 5 schools at the moment, soon to be, well, as of today, 9 schools. So we've got the Fermain Academy, which is a secondary alternative provision. So this is for youngsters aged 14 to 16 who've been either permanently excluded from mainstream schools, or they are on the very edge, on the very cusp of being permanently excluded. So they're some of the most challenging young people in the northwest of England. The next one is our Access Academy, which is it's an SEMH school with a focus on mental health challenges. Third one is the Cornerstone Academy, which is a primary alternative provision, again, unbelievably, for youngsters aged 5 to 11 who are either being permanently excluded from mainstream schools or potentially will be. Really proud to say that since in our area, which is quite a big area, that since the Cornerstone Academy has been opened, no permanent exclusions have happened in mainstream schools. Every single child that has come to the Cornerstone Academy has then been returned to full-time education, either in a mainstream or a specialist setting. So that's really exciting, having that sort of that feather in the cap. I've got a case study that I'm hoping I'll get to if I talk quite quickly. I do talk quickly anyway, I talk on my hands, so please excuse me. Typical language teacher, can't help myself. We then have the Keystone Academy, which is a social, emotional, mental health school for children with neurodivergent challenges. So that is a huge umbrella for just about anything from autism to ADHD, selective mute, Tourette's. It's a massive umbrella. That school currently has 120 students in. It's our biggest school. Really exciting, only opened last year and is wonderful. And in September, we opened our latest school, which is the Raise Academy, which is an SEMH school, which is potentially for those children who have really very challenging behaviours. So we have schools for what we call imploders. So those youngsters who self-harm, who stay in their bedroom, who will avoid school at all costs, and exploders, who their behaviours present very differently. They will get quite angry, they will throw chairs and so on and so forth. So we have a mixture of all of these. And as of today, as I say, 4 more schools have officially joined us, which is really exciting. So that's another 200 students joining our trust. Our CEO, David, knows very well. I think we're going for global domination. So look,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we could be appearing in a town near you at any time. And I'd be really excited to come out and meet some of you guys so we could talk through what we do, because it's very different to mainstream education in the UK. Our premise of starting with the lab schools was, you know, a little bit like Stacey, really being wowed by David's, you know, philosophy. And we believe very, very clearly that, you know, education doesn't transform the world. Education changes people, and people change the world. And, you know, traditionally, students who go into specialist education, I'm afraid to say the aspiration for those children is very low. And that actually has to change, because those youngsters can achieve, the sky is the limit for them. If there are stars in the sky that other youngsters can achieve, then so should those youngsters in specialist settings. And it is down to us to ensure that we allow that to happen. Because if you look at, you know, if you get some food for thought here, learning is a process of acquiring new skills and understanding. Education is an organized system of learning. Training, a type of education that's focused on learning specific skills. And a school is a community of learners, a group that comes together to learn with and from each other. Now, interestingly, children love to learn. All children love to learn. We're born curious. They do it naturally. However, many have faced challenges with education, and some have really big problems with school. So we have to do things a little bit differently. So the first thing that we had to do as a trust was ensure that we're clarifying our moral purpose. Ensure that the achievement and the learning of students expressed as our moral purpose is at the centre of everything we do. So everything that we do is based around the child. So in that sense, our core values, everybody in our trust, every single teacher in our school, every support member in our school, this has this through it like a stick of what we call rock. It goes through the very centre of our being. We're child-centred, we're adaptive and sensitive to need, and we are authentic in our relationships. So basically what you see is what you get. And that authenticity in relationships is absolutely crucial when working with any young people, but particularly when you're working with young people who have the challenges that our youngsters face. So essentially in education, you know, we spend a lot of time hammering a square peg into a round hole, and it doesn't fit. And the only thing that happens is that the peg gets damaged. That's the child gets damaged. So in our trust, what we do is we take the peg, the child, and build the hole around it. That's our philosophy. So with our core values, these are our aspirational values. We want solution-focused mindsets, a climate of reflection and feedback, intrinsic motivation. Now that's a really interesting one. I'm sure you'll all agree. Many people are kind of externally motivated, continual improvement, and a culture of collaboration. So therein, that's where it comes to the instructional core, as David has already talked on. So we essentially, in our schools, which is very unusual for specialist settings to be talking in this language, where learning, pedagogy, instructional core, instructional leadership are all part of our pedagogy and how we do things. And again, it's for me, that triangle of student engagement, teacher skill and knowledge, content, the rigor and relevance of the content. Without any of those three items, the bit in the middle, the task, what that child is actually doing and what they're learning cannot occur. So it's absolutely crucial that our teachers and our learning leads, be they teaching assistants or support teachers, that they have real expertise in their subject, but not just expertise, passion for education, passion for their subject. I'm a French teacher, so that's, I love teaching French. I just love anything education. So passion for teaching it. It means that when a child asks you a difficult question, you've got the answer at your fingertips because you know your subject, be that geography, be that science, whatever it is, you know it. So when we started on this journey, we then had to look at how we were going to move the instructional leadership. So we wanted to create a trust-wide culture of high quality education underpinned by high expectations and aspirations, raising standards to maximize the potential of all staff and students. And that for us is key. It's not just the students, it's the staff. We have to maximize potential so that everybody reaches their full potential. And through doing this, with focusing on the instructional core, instructional leadership, instructional rounds, action planning, and then building that all into our school development. So I'm not going to talk through too much of the slides, but we're moving our schools from great to excellent. As you know, in Ofsted in this country, everything is, was, because they're changing it, allegedly, was cast as the great side of it was outstanding. We don't talk about outstanding. We talk about unleashing greatness. We talk about excellence. And we talk about putting professional learning at the heart of everything we do and developing professional practices and making sure that the protocols we have are pervasive. So everything that we do is observable across the trust. So it's not just one school. This is sharing good practice and best practice and then repeating it. So this process of appreciative inquiry, which again is when Pascale said that about, sometimes trying to convince people this is a good thing, is, there's a skill to it, definitely, is that actually this is not judgmental. This is about spotting what's great and sharing it and actually making sure that we're doing it everywhere. So I'm going to share a couple of theories of action with you. These are from our instructional rounds. So I'm going to go with authentic relationships. I talked about that at the beginning. So when the school and all the adults build authentic relationships, so that's staff to student, student to staff, student to student, and there's another one, staff to staff. That's really important. Through high expectations, mutual respect, and high levels of emotional intelligence that build a calm and non-confrontational approach, then students feel known. They're more engaged and secure in their learning. They're open to challenge and critique. They manage their workload better and collaborate more effectively with each other. That's what we were finding when we did our rounds across the trust. So we put together some protocols. I'm going to share them because I think it might give you a flavour of the kind of things that we put together as a group. We needed to ensure that in all of our lessons at all times, and bearing in mind that within our schools, every moment within the school is a learning opportunity. So that's from when they arrive and have breakfast in the morning with us, to break times, lunch times, after school clubs. All of our staff are on duty all of the time. So we have lunch with the children, we do everything. So all the students feel valued. This one's crucial. Students are able to make mistakes without fear of judgment. Really clear, really important. Students feel confident to take risks. Students feel safe to participate and ask for help. That's one of our teaching standards about having that safe learning environment. There's an atmosphere of mutual respect in the learning environment. All adults show interest and make connections with individual students. Stacey mentioned about us being good listeners. I do a lot of work on listening without motive, because often we're listening, but we're not actually listening. We're too busy thinking about what we're going to say or what the implications of this are. And that's a really key thing. It's listening without motive. We've done a lot of work across our schools on this. Again, adults share of themselves appropriately. It's good that we give a bit of ourselves, show a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of who we are within professional boundaries, of course. And again, that in itself needs to be explicit. All adults and students feel confident to be themselves. At one of our schools, Keystone, their tagline is "Be yourself, be brilliant." That's what they want their students to be. And everyone has the opportunity to be heard. So that was on authentic relationships.
Yeah, go through it fairly quickly, Helen.
We'll do, I'm nearly there. When we get to them, we get the YES framework. When the school creates a clear framework for teaching and learning born out of its moral purpose, identifying a repertoire of teaching approaches and routines, then the students are clear about expectations and thrive because of the consistent yet personalised approach. There are some here. So teacher and learner demonstrates a genuine, what I said, genuine passion for the subject, confidence in their subject knowledge. Learning activities are pitched appropriately, relevance to the real world, clearly sequenced learning where progression is clear. Students fully aware of the learning destination, understand the why. Students are actively encouraged to show curiosity and ask questions. Inquiry-led learning is carefully planned. Learning activities allow students to think creatively. And teachers and leaders of learning equip students with the skills and confidence to collaborate with others. I'll follow here, what's the impact? So this is who we are, highly aspirational alternative education and specialist provision, where equity underpins everything. So equity, by that we mean, not everybody gets the same. Everybody gets what they need to move to the next stage, so that all staff and students can maximise their potential, whatever that might be, and lives are transformed. I'm going to quickly give you a very quick case study.
Very quick, please, Helen.
Very quick. So this is a student who came to one of our schools, who prior to coming to the school was on a reduced timetable, away from his classroom and his peers, disruptive behaviour, no concentration. He was excluded for physical assaults against other children and staff, biting, kicking, didn't care. And things were going very, very wrong. Started at our school. The teachers worked tirelessly to understand his needs, developed a strong connection with him so that he would trust them. A level of mutual respect was created. The classroom environment was adapted, greater focus on phonics and reading because he couldn't access the curriculum, and ability to reflect on his day thoroughly. He was then provided with certain things that would help. What was the outcome? Now he engages with all lessons. He raises his hand and to ask and answer questions. He works independently. He's not afraid to make mistakes. He reflects 3 times daily. He's able to say what went well. And this is the one I love the most. His smile is increasing daily. And finally, staff at Cornerstone will continue to support this child to maintain his new love of learning and reduction of negative behaviours. This is a case study I've just presented to our trustees. I'm open for any questions. Sorry, it went on a bit, David.
Thank you, Helen. And I think we'll just try and get the other Helen to talk now. But can I just make one comment about, well, that was just lovely and so reflective of what you do. And the really important thing that colleagues need to know is that your youngsters, despite their challenges, you know, the vast majority of them perform at national norms, all right?
National and above. They come out with a minimum of 5 GCSEs or above. So we even the playing field with their peers in other
absolutely
schools.
And it just, the work that you're doing by being so serious about your pedagogy and relating your pedagogy to the needs of your youngsters produces those outstanding results. And I hope that world domination continues to happen. Helen, where's Helen? Are you there, Helen Bradford Keegan?
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Helen. Thank you so much. I'm sorry you're
It's all right. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Take your time, because I built in some time at the end. I particularly wanted Helen to present, because I think the work that she's doing in one of the country's leading private independent schools is quite exemplary. So over to you, Helen.
Right. Can I just check? Can people see my screen?
Yep.
Right. Brilliant. Okay. So as I think David mentioned and Stacey, I'm here from Bolton School, and Bolton School. I'm not sure what the system is in France, but here we call them private or independent schools. They're schools that students in the majority pay to have a place here, and we are able to work independent of much of the sort of national curriculum. However, in the main, at Bolton School, we broadly follow national curriculum and curriculum initiatives because we see ourselves as a mainstream provision in that sense. So the SERI in particular is about 2 years old. It was founded in September 2022. And as you can see there, it's the Centre for Educational Research and Innovation. And in fact, this innovation from our head of foundation came on the back of our involvement with lab schools. And that gave us the impetus really to see how important evidence-informed research is. So we are here to ensure that the education that we provide in our 5 schools, so just to be clear about that, we have an infant school, 2 junior schools, 1 for girls, 1 for boys, and 2 senior schools which go all the way up to 18 A level. 1 for girls, 1 for boys. And we aim to bridge that gap between research and practical implementation so that all our schools have impactful outcomes. And for that reason, the SERI prioritises there being both purpose and action in our educational strategies, and to have teachers talking about the theory that they know, but also what they know about what happens inside their classrooms with the particular students that they teach. And the reason that I say that very forcefully, the particular students that they teach, is because like all schools at the moment, we you know, the type of student, the way young people are responding to learning, the environments that they are growing up in are in constant change. And it is really important that our staff remain alive to how they need to adapt in the classroom to meet the needs of all our pupils there, and to do so in an informed way. So I was made the head of the SERI, and I have to say, it was a job that was sort of sold to me really with very little job description. It was make of it what you can, which was actually a wonderful and exciting position to be in. And I've sort of based much of what we've done so far over the last 2 years on what I'd learned from our experience of being a lab school. So one of the things that I'm keen to do is to promote research-based decision making, and that is becoming now really clearly embedded, and is a clear priority for others. I now get a lot more footfall in terms of people coming to see me because they are making a decision either at classroom level, department level, pastoral team level, about something that is going to impact students. And that one of their first thoughts is, what does the evidence tell us? What does the research tell us? Has somebody done this before? And it's great to see that turnaround in thinking. And so there's been a significant rise in our library use, in recourse to research materials, and then to seeing that becoming a practical integration. And many people are now much more familiar with what we might loosely call the action research cycle of doing the review, understanding the literature before moving forward. And let me tell you, because I know you raised this earlier, you know, in 2 years, we've, you know, much of what I was doing was with the we call it, the idiom in English is preaching to the converted, but basically talking to people who were already research engaged, but actually by harnessing their enthusiasm and letting that spread to the next tier of colleagues who are sort of vaguely interested if they're given the time, and then they seep out to the next group of colleagues who don't really mind but will go along with it. We're slowly building up much more of a focus of interest amongst the staff, and we hope to eventually reach that pivot point where only the very few are not willingly coming with us. So the lab school model was something that started in one of our schools, the boys' senior school. And as you will have read, and as you've seen in other presentations today, we went through that process of the instructional rounds, the appreciative inquiry. We looked at particular focus areas, and what stood out was assessment, collaboration, our use of technology, because we've been a school using iPads now for 12 years. And we have many iterations now of different review cycles happening across boys division in particular, because they've been in it for much longer. Girls division then joined not long after. We did another appreciative inquiry and found lots of commonality between the two schools, which allowed for greater collaboration amongst our divisions. And we have also moved on to working with the primary school. Sorry, I'm moving quite quickly here. But what that model has given us is a format for conducting practitioner inquiry. And so now in my role, where I've been given time to read, time to work with colleagues, time to innovate, I mean, it's fabulous. I now have a number of research sets around school, which are either within a school or they can be cross-foundational. So these are just some examples of the research sets that I have either worked on last year or I'm working on this year. We have the AI project, and I call it a project because there are many, many strands to it. We have some teachers who are in basically dabbling sets. I call them rather research sets, but they're playing out, they feed back into what they've been doing. We have people who are specifically working on a particular aspect of AI and how they can use it in their classroom, and they are using the pupils as focus groups for that, and to try and build up some research that can be disseminated to other colleagues. I am working with a number of external providers of testing out different sort of apps and platforms in AI, and that is also part of the research. And more recently, and very exciting, and I didn't realize you were on the call, Lucy, but we are now working with the AI in Education department and Lucy Caton at Bolton University, and we're looking very specifically at a small piece of research, but really important on the edge of where AI can take us, as to how AI can be used in giving feedback and therefore helping them to make progress for neurodiverse students, because that is an area that is of interest to us here. We have some very, very high functioning but neurodiverse students who find that area of school life increasingly difficult, and we feel that AI has a real capability there. So we're doing those sorts of strategies. We've run a metacognition project, and that has sort of started to evolve, and a number of people have become interested in the Marge learning models of Arthur Shimomura. So we're starting to use that as part of another research set. So this idea of the appreciative inquiry, the action research cycle has started to feed into many other aspects of our school life in terms of innovating as well as embedding what is already our strengths. This is just another aspect of what I do here. So this is more about me working as an individual, but obviously I have to work with a lot of people across the school in order to do this. But I am responsible for the piece of research, and it's a long-term piece of research where we're looking at how students transition into the various phases of our school, both from our own junior schools, but also for externally. And we're really looking at where there is learning loss, and that's nationally. We get our gap, again, I don't know what it is in France, but our gap is from year 6 to year 7, where they move from primary to secondary. And there is a national recognition of learning loss. And I think there's very few schools that don't recognize that experience. And we are looking at how we can bridge that gap and improve the quality of transition there. I've done a number of impact studies. So these come up every year. I've got another pile on my desk to look through at the moment. And this is where other members of the leadership teams or departmental middle leadership will ask me to undertake an impact study for them on something they are doing. So it might be new reports. It might be somebody who wants to bring in a creative talent program. And I find ways of monitoring that impact, often very qualitatively, but it is really important that we continue to be aware of when things are working and indeed not working, so we don't continue doing things that are actually having no effect. As part of my role, I also have a number of partnerships and collaborations. Obviously, there's one through the lab school with, and in particular, I work closely with a number of schools now in that lab school network, as one of them being Beaumont, and you've just heard from Stacey. But also we work with the Bursary Foundation to improve the outcomes for our bursary students. We have a number of students here who are on full bursaries, and they need significant support beyond just simply being here. Sorry, I think I've gone backwards. Yes. We've also developed a number of theories of action, which we handily call signature pedagogies, just to be different, but a number of theories of action, which we are working through the school constantly in evolution. That has been led, I've put David's picture here, and he'll be pleased I've put him holding a snake. But David did grasp the snake. There is a point to that picture when we first started with the lab schools, and therefore I do defer to him a lot in supporting other parts of the school in undertaking these appreciative inquiries. But we now have signature pedagogies in each of the divisions of our school, theories of action which provide us with, allow us to keep the distinct nature of each school while providing us with a commonality in terms of our vision and purpose. Just other things I do, I look at recruitment and impact. I feed into the CPD and practitioner research. We trying to use practitioner research as a form of CPD, as I think you've heard from other people, really making sure that individuals also get to develop a particular aspect of their practice. And so our ultimate plan, and this is, you know, we're talking somewhere between 250 and 300 members of teaching staff. What our aim is to get to a point where teachers are identifying areas for their own development and using practitioner research as a way forward. But we're starting first and foremost, because of the sheer numbers of teaching staff that involves, we are starting with our focus on doing that at departmental level. And that is the next part of our 3-year plan. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Helen, thank you very much indeed. That's really comprehensive, and you've got an enormous amount of work on your plate. But I think I particularly want you to talk about that because it shows how a school is taking research very seriously and spreading it out through the whole of the pedagogy that's employed. So thank you very much. I'm very conscious of time now.
Yeah, so am I.
Pascale,
Thank
I'd
you.
ask
very much. It's absolutely fascinating. And my feeling is really that we need another session, because it would be really interesting to go into more details into what type of research and have more practical examples. Maybe it's frustrating also not to have any videos. The only videos we had about students could not be shown. So I don't know if you're ready to devote another morning to that, or another, for you it's morning, yeah, it is. It would be wonderful to meet you all again soon.
Okay. Craig, have you got a comment just to make from the university?
Yeah, thanks, David. But first of all, I just want to thank everyone who's spoken, and extend that thanks to David as well for steering the lab school ship. I think just a few bullet points really to summarise from me in terms of what the presentations have emphasised is I think the first one would be the critical role that research plays in meaningful improvements in education. I think particularly when schools work collaboratively, as our schools are. And I think Stacey highlighted the fact that this spans lots of sectors of education as well. It's not exclusive or owned by one. And I think pooling expertise, resources, experiences, I think creates this real powerful community for change and improvement. I think David highlighted the importance of adaptive teaching and adaptive approaches. And I think, again, that was echoed by lots of the speakers who, whilst they're working within frameworks and guidelines, it's always context informed, the approaches that they're taking, and they're adapting to the needs of their particular students. I think another important thing that's come out of this is the importance of being intentional and deliberate, rather than educational research kind of sitting in some abstract exercise. It's been very, very practical, a tool to be used to inform change. And I think just very, very quickly, because I'm conscious of time, I think David's comments on school improvement being a way of life rather than this tokenistic exercise that we go through, I think again was echoed and demonstrated by all of the other speakers that mentioned establishing a culture early on as an important step in then establishing change. And I think my final point would be that what this has demonstrated to me, and I'm always inspired, and I always leave these meetings with a desire to go and work on some things. I think first of all, it's a huge regret of mine that my 16 years in secondary education, I didn't know about the lab schools, and I didn't know David at that time, and that's always a real frustration that I've mentioned previously. But I think what this demonstrates, certainly from the schools that have spoken, is there's real value in the lab schools network and real value in working collaboratively, and I think they've demonstrated that really, really well today.
Thank you, Craig.
Really great. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for summarizing so well everything that's been said.
Very welcome.
I see that some people have already opened the door. It's just in France. It's 2:30 right now, and we have no space really for further discussion. But if that's okay, David, I'll contact you, and maybe we can respond for something.
And I think we're managing this. So if there are colleagues who want to stay on for another 5 minutes, Pascale, if you've got to go, we understand that. But if other colleagues want to stay on for just a few more minutes, that'll be okay that'll be okay as well.
In the recording. Thank you so much once more. Bye bye.
Are there any other comments, colleagues, that folk want to make? I'm just very appreciative to Simon and Stacey and Helen for that. That was just really, really, really good. What I find.
Other than that, I'm going to have to dip out because I'm about to deliver some creative writing interventions. So.
Okay.
Okay. See ya. Bye bye.
I think what for me is so exciting and sort of in a sense reassuring is that because we've been going at this now for a few years, and some schools, you know, well, some schools here, but other schools I work with, you know, for longer than that, you really see growth, and you see growth in the pedagogy, you see growth in the teachers, and you see growth in the sort of the normative outcomes as well. And I think, Mark, your comment was just so well taken, that we've got it wrong, you know, and but it is possible to actually move this to scale if we have the right policies and the right commitment, you know. Okay, shall we just draw this to a close then? Helen, thank you once again for that. I'm sorry we cut short, but
No.